The divorce papers were spread across our kitchen table like accusations written in legal jargon. I stared at them, my coffee growing cold in my trembling hands, wondering how Daniel had found out about everything. What happens when you think you can have it all, your loving husband and your best friend, only to find your entire world crumbling around you? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The evening light filtered through our suburban duplex windows as I stirred the pasta sauce, glancing at the clock for the third time in 10 minutes. Daniel was late again, probably buried in spreadsheets at his accounting firm while dinner grew cold, and Emma finished her homework alone at the kitchen table. "Mom, when's Dad coming home?" Emma asked, her 7-year-old voice carrying that familiar note of disappointment I'd been hearing too often lately. "Soon, sweetheart," I lied, knowing Daniel would probably stumble through the door after 8, mumbling apologies about quarterly reports and tax deadlines. The same excuses, month after month, year after year. My phone buzzed against the granite countertop. A text from Zoe. "How's the Ice Palace tonight? Still married to Mr. Excitement?" I couldn't help but smile. Zoe always knew exactly what to say to make me feel understood. She got me, in ways Daniel never seemed to anymore. Her messages were like little rays of sunshine in my increasingly grey domestic life. "Emma, go wash your hands for dinner," I said, quickly typing back, "Same old. He's working late again. I feel invisible." "You deserve so much better, Lise. Want to grab coffee tomorrow? I have some new design projects to show you." My heart lifted at the prospect. Zoe's graphic design work was always so creative, so vibrant, everything my life with Daniel wasn't. "Yes, I need some adult conversation that doesn't involve tax codes." "Mum, the pasta smells funny," Emma called from the bathroom. I rushed to the stove, finding the sauce had started to stick to the bottom of the pan. Great. Another perfect evening, ruined by Daniel's absence. As I scraped the burnt bits away, I heard his key in the front door. "Sorry I'm late," Daniel said, hanging his jacket on the back of a chair instead of in the closet where it belonged. His tie was loosened, his usually neat brown hair disheveled. "The Morrison account," I interrupted, not bothering to hide my irritation. "Right, because the Morrison account is more important than your family." Daniel's tired blue eyes met mine with that familiar look of resignation. "Lysandra, please. Not tonight. It's been a long day." "It's been a long day for me too, Daniel. Emma asked for you 3 times during homework. Dinner's been ready for an hour." I gestured at the congealing pasta on the plates. "But I suppose your spreadsheets don't care if they get cold." Emma appeared in the doorway, sensing the tension that had become as much a part of our evening routine as brushing teeth. "Can we just eat? I'm hungry." Daniel's face softened as he looked at our daughter. "Of course, Princess. I'm sorry I'm late." As we sat around the table, the silence stretched between us like a chasm. Daniel mechanically ate his reheated dinner while scrolling through emails on his phone. Emma picked at her food, glancing nervously between us. My phone lit up with another message from Zoe. "Coffee at Brewster's at 2 p.m. I have so much to tell you about my weekend in the city." I felt a flutter of excitement as I discreetly typed back, "Can't wait. I need to hear everything." "Who are you texting?" Daniel asked, not looking up from his own phone. "Just Zoe. We're meeting for coffee tomorrow." I kept my voice casual, but something in Daniel's expression shifted. A flicker of something. Suspicion? Annoyance? "You see Zoe a lot lately," he said. "She's my best friend, Daniel. We've been close since college, you know that." I felt defensive, though I couldn't quite say why. "Maybe if you were around more, I wouldn't need to rely on my friends for company." Daniel set down his phone and looked at me directly for the first time all evening. "I'm working to provide for this family, Lysandra. I thought you understood that." "I understand that you use work as an excuse to avoid dealing with anything real," I shot back. When's the last time we had an actual conversation? When's the last time you asked me how I'm doing, what I'm thinking about? I'm asking now, but I was already standing, clearing plates with more force than necessary. Too little, too late. Later that evening, after Emma was in bed, I sat on our couch scrolling through social media while Daniel worked on his laptop at the kitchen table. Zoe had posted pictures from her weekend in Manhattan. Art galleries, trendy restaurants, a Broadway show. Her life looked so vibrant, so full of possibility. I opened our text conversation and began typing. Seeing your weekend posts. I'm so jealous. I can't remember the last time Daniel and I did anything spontaneous or fun. You deserve adventure, Lise. Life's too short to settle for boring. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd made different choices. It's never too late to make new ones. I stared at that message for a long moment, my heart racing slightly. There was something in those words, an invitation to something I couldn't quite name, but desperately wanted. Lysandra? Daniel's voice startled me. He was standing in the doorway, looking at me with concern. Everything okay? You seem distant lately. I quickly closed my phone. I'm fine, just tired. Maybe we should talk. I'm going to bed, I said, brushing past him toward the stairs. As I lay in bed later, Daniel's steady breathing beside me, I replayed the evening in my mind. His question echoed, everything okay? No, everything wasn't okay. I felt trapped, invisible, taken for granted. Daniel saw me as a fixture in his perfectly ordered life, someone to cook dinner, care for Emma, and never ask for anything more. But Zoe saw me differently. She saw the woman I used to be, the woman I could still be if I had the courage to reach for something more. I picked up my phone one more time, seeing a final message from Zoe. Sweet dreams, beautiful. Tomorrow will be better. I smiled in the darkness and quickly deleted our entire conversation thread before setting the phone back on my nightstand. Daniel stirred beside me, and I held my breath until his breathing returned to its regular rhythm. Tomorrow would be better. Zoe was right about that. Brewster's Cafe buzzed with afternoon energy as I spotted Zoe at our usual corner table. She looked radiant in a flowing emerald dress that complemented her auburn hair. Her laptop open, with colourful design mock-ups spread across the screen. Everything about her seemed to sparkle with life and creativity. There's my favourite HR manager, she said, standing to embrace me. Her perfume was intoxicating, something expensive and sophisticated that made me acutely aware of my own department store fragrance. You look amazing, I said, settling into the chair across from her. That dress is gorgeous. This old thing? Zoe laughed, but I could see she was pleased. I picked it up at a boutique in Soho. The owner said it was perfect for my colouring. As she launched into stories about her Manhattan weekend, I found myself captivated by her animated gestures and infectious enthusiasm. She'd visited 3 art galleries, had dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking Central Park, and met fascinating people at every turn. And then, she said, leaning forward conspiratorially, this incredibly handsome photographer asked for my number. Can you believe it? He said I had the most expressive eyes he'd ever seen. I felt a strange pang at her words. Not jealousy exactly, but something close to it. Did you give it to him? Of course not, Zoe said, reaching across to squeeze my hand. I told him I was already devoted to someone very special. The warmth of her touch sent an unexpected thrill through me. Zoe, tell me about your week, she said, her green eyes focused intently on my face. You looked stressed in your text last night. I found myself pouring out all my frustrations about Daniel, his late nights, his emotional distance, the way he treated our marriage like another item on his to-do list. Zoe listened with the kind of focused attention I hadn't received at home in months. He doesn't deserve you, she said finally, her voice soft but fierce. You're this incredible, vibrant woman, and he's treating you like furniture. I don't know what to do anymore, I admitted. Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing. Zoe's hand found mine again across the table. You're not disappearing. You're just buried under all these expectations and obligations. But I see you, Lise. The real you. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, her thumb tracing gentle circles on my palm. I should have pulled away. I knew I should have, but her touch felt like the first genuine human connection I'd had in months. I should probably get back to work, I said reluctantly, glancing at my watch. Already? We barely got started. Zoe's disappointment was evident. What time does Daniel expect you home? He's working late again tonight. Some client dinner. Perfect. Let's grab dinner ourselves. There's this new Thai place downtown I've been dying to try. I hesitated. I should get home to Emma. Doesn't she have that sleepover at Madison's tonight? You mentioned it last week. I'd forgotten about the sleepover. You have an incredible memory. I remember everything about you, Zoe said, and something in her tone made my pulse quicken. 3 hours later, we were sharing pad thai and spring rolls at a dimly lit restaurant downtown, our conversation flowing like wine. Zoe told me about her latest design projects, her dreams of opening her own studio, her thoughts on art and life and everything in between. You should come to the gallery opening with me next Friday, she said. It's this amazing new artist. She does these incredible pieces about women breaking free from societal constraints. I'd love to, but Daniel wouldn't approve. I bristled slightly. It's not that he wouldn't approve. He doesn't really get the art scene. When's the last time you did something just for yourself, Lise? Something that fed your soul instead of everyone else's needs? I couldn't answer because I honestly couldn't remember. Come with me, Zoe said, reaching across to touch my cheek gently. Live a little. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Client dinner running late. Don't wait up. I showed Zoe the message, and she shook her head in disgust. See what I mean? He doesn't even care where you are or what you're doing. Maybe I should head home, I said, though I made no move to leave. Or, Zoe said, signaling the waiter for another bottle of wine, you could stay and enjoy yourself for once. When I finally got home after 10, Daniel was already in bed, his back turned toward my side. I undressed quietly in the bathroom, studying my reflection in the mirror. My cheeks were flushed, my eyes bright with something I hadn't seen there in years. I looked alive. The next morning, Daniel was already gone when I woke up, just a note on the kitchen counter about an early meeting. Emma was still at her sleepover, so I had the house to myself, a rare luxury. My phone chimed with a good morning text from Zoe. Last night was perfect. You were perfect. Can't wait to see you again soon. I smiled, typing back, I had the best time. Thank you for reminding me who I used to be. You're still that person, Lise. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. I was still smiling when my phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. Hey, I answered. Morning, how was your evening? Something in his tone put me on guard. Fine, Zoe and I had dinner. Where? That new Thai place downtown. Why? Just curious, you got home pretty late. You were already asleep, I said, feeling defensive, though I wasn't sure why. Your client dinner must have run really late too. Yeah, it did. There was a pause. Lysandra, we need to talk when I get home tonight. About us. About things. My stomach clenched. What kind of things? We'll discuss it tonight. I love you. After he hung up, I sat staring at my phone, anxiety creeping up my spine. Did he know something? Suspect something? But there was nothing to suspect. Zoe and I were just friends. Close friends who enjoyed each other's company. I texted Zoe. Daniel wants to talk tonight. I'm nervous. About what? You haven't done anything wrong. You're allowed to have friends. I know, but nothing. Don't let him make you feel guilty for having a life outside of his boring world. You deserve friendship, laughter, joy. If he can't provide those things, he should be grateful someone else can. She was right, of course. Daniel had no right to question my friendships, especially when he was never around anyway. I was being silly, letting my imagination run wild, but as I got ready for work that morning, I found myself wondering what Mark, Daniel's brother, had been doing downtown last night. I could have sworn I'd seen his car in the restaurant parking lot, but when I'd looked again, it was gone. Probably just my imagination. Sandra Quill's dining room was set with her best china, the table gleaming under the warm chandelier light. Daniel's mother had always been a gracious hostess, but tonight I sensed something different in her demeanor, a coolness that hadn't been there before. "I hope you don't mind that I invited Zoe," I said as we walked up the front steps, Emma skipping ahead in her Sunday dress. "She's been feeling a bit lonely lately, and I thought some family time would be good for her." Daniel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You didn't think to ask me first." "Since when do I need permission to invite my best friend to dinner?" I kept my voice light, but irritation flared in my chest. "Your mother said to bring whoever I wanted." Zoe emerged from her car looking stunning in a black wrap dress that hugged her curves perfectly. She'd done something different with her hair, swept it up in an elegant twist that showed off her long neck and the delicate gold earrings I'd helped her pick out last week. "Mrs. Quill," Zoe called out warmly as Sandra opened the front door. "Thank you so much for including me. I brought wine, a Pinot Grigio from that little vineyard upstate." Sandra's smile seemed forced as she accepted the bottle. "How thoughtful. Please, come in." The evening started pleasantly enough. Mark was there with his girlfriend Jessica, and we all gathered in the living room for cocktails while Sandra put the finishing touches on dinner. Emma immediately gravitated toward her uncle Mark, showing him a drawing she'd made at school. "It's our family," Emma explained, holding up the crayon masterpiece. "That's Mommy, and that's me, and that's Zoe, and that's you, Uncle Mark." I noticed Daniel studying the picture with a frown. "Where am I in this family portrait, Princess?" Emma looked confused for a moment. "Oh, I forgot. You can be the dog." The room fell silent except for Zoe's barely suppressed laughter. I felt heat creep up my neck as Daniel's expression darkened. "Emma, that's not very nice," I said quickly. "Daddy should be right here next to Mommy." "But he's never home when I draw," Emma said with the brutal honesty of childhood. "Zoe comes over lots more." Mark cleared his throat uncomfortably, while Jessica suddenly became very interested in her wine glass. Sandra's lips pressed into a thin line as she announced dinner was ready. At the table, I found myself seated between Zoe and Emma, with Daniel across from us next to his mother. The conversation flowed around topics of work and weather, but I could feel undercurrents of tension I couldn't quite identify. "So Zoe," Sandra said, cutting into her roast beef with surgical precision, "Lysandra tells me you're a graphic designer. That must be interesting work." "I love it," Zoe replied enthusiastically. "I'm actually working on a campaign for a women's empowerment organization. It's all about encouraging women to break free from limiting relationships and pursue their authentic selves." Daniel's fork clinked against his plate. "Limiting relationships." "You know," Zoe continued, either oblivious to the tension or choosing to ignore it. "Relationships where one partner is expected to dim their light so the other can feel more comfortable. Where passion and creativity are sacrificed for stability and routine." I felt a flush of excitement at her words, even as I noticed Daniel's knuckles whiten around his knife handle. "Some people value stability," Sandra said coolly. "There's something to be said for commitment and putting family first." "Of course," Zoe agreed, but her tone suggested she thought otherwise. "But what good is commitment if it slowly kills your spirit?" "I think," Daniel said carefully, "that real commitment means working through difficulties together, not looking for excitement elsewhere." The barb hit its mark, and I felt my temper flare. "That's rich, coming from someone who's married to his calculator." Zoe laughed, a bright, tinkling sound that seemed to echo too loudly in the suddenly quiet room. "Oh my God, Liz, that's perfect. Married to his calculator." "Daniel works hard to provide for his family," Sandra said. her voice sharp with disapproval. And I work hard too, I shot back, but somehow I still manage to be present for my daughter and maintain meaningful relationships. Meaningful relationships, Daniel repeated slowly, his eyes fixed on mine, with an intensity that made me squirm. Yes, meaningful relationships, like friendship. Remember friendship, Daniel? That thing where people actually enjoy each other's company. Zoe reached over and squeezed my hand supportively. Lise is the most loyal friend anyone could ask for. She deserves the same energy she gives. I'm sure she does, Sandra said, but she was looking at our joined hands with obvious distaste. Emma, sensing the adult tension but not understanding it, began chattering about her upcoming school play. I tried to focus on her words, but I was acutely aware of Daniel's continued stare and the way Zoe's thumb was tracing small circles on my palm. Maybe we should talk about something else, Mark suggested diplomatically. Good idea, I said, pulling my hand free from Zoe's and immediately missing the warmth. Emma, tell everyone about your role in the play. But the damage was done. The rest of dinner passed in stilted conversation and uncomfortable silences. When Zoe complimented Sandra's cooking, she received only a curt thank you. When she tried to engage Daniel in conversation about his work, he answered in monosyllables. After dinner, while Sandra served coffee and dessert, Zoe and I stepped onto the back patio for some air. Your mother-in-law hates me, Zoe said with a rueful smile. She doesn't hate you. She's just protective of Daniel. And what about Daniel? He's been shooting daggers at me all evening. I sighed, looking through the sliding glass door at my husband, who was helping Emma with a puzzle while pointedly not looking in our direction. He's been weird lately, suspicious about everything. Suspicious of what? We're friends. There's nothing wrong with friendship. I know that. You know that. But Daniel... I trailed off, not sure how to finish the sentence. Daniel what? Doesn't trust you, doesn't want you to have friends, wants to control every aspect of your life. It's not that simple, Zoe. Isn't it? She moved closer, her voice dropping to an intimate whisper. Liz, you're withering away in there. Every time I see you, there's a little less light in your eyes. How long are you going to let him dim your sparkle? Before I could answer, the sliding door opened and Mark stepped outside. Sorry to interrupt, he said, but his expression suggested he wasn't sorry at all. Mum's asking for you, Lysandra. Something about Emma's bedtime. Inside, I found Sandra waiting for me in the kitchen while Emma said her goodbyes. Lysandra, Sandra said quietly, I hope you don't mind me speaking plainly, but I'm concerned about you. Concerned about what? About your friendship with Zoe, the way you two interact, the things she says about marriage and commitment. It's not appropriate for a married woman. Heat flashed through me. There's nothing inappropriate about my friendship with Zoe. Perhaps not intentionally, Sandra said, her voice gentle but firm. But appearances matter, dear, and the way you look at her, the way she touches you, the way you defend her over your own husband. It doesn't look good. I can't believe you're saying this to me. I'm saying it because I care about this family, about Daniel and Emma, about you too, even if you don't believe that right now. I wanted to argue, to defend myself and Zoe, but something in Sandra's eyes stopped me, not judgment but genuine worry. I think we should go, I said instead. The ride home was silent except for Emma's chatter from the back seat about how much fun she'd had with Uncle Mark. Daniel stared straight ahead, his hands gripping the steering wheel, while I gazed out the passenger window and tried to process Sandra's words. When we got home and Emma was tucked into bed, Daniel finally spoke. We need to talk. If this is about dinner, it's about a lot of things, Lysandra. But yes, dinner is part of it. He sat heavily on the couch, looking older than his 37 years. Do you have any idea how humiliating tonight was for me? Humiliating? Because Emma drew a silly picture? Because my wife spent the entire evening defending another woman over me? Because she held that woman's hand at my mother's dinner table. Because she made jokes at my expense and let her friend laugh along. I felt cornered, defensive. You're being ridiculous. Zoe and I are friends, close friends. There's nothing wrong with that. Close friends, Daniel repeated. Is that what we're calling it? What's that supposed to mean? Daniel was quiet for a long moment, studying my face with those tired blue eyes. I'm starting to wonder if I know my wife at all. That night, as I lay in bed next to Daniel's rigid form, I replayed the evening over and over. Sandra's concerned words, Mark's suspicious looks, Daniel's hurt expression when Emma forgot to include him in her drawing. But mostly, I thought about Zoe's hand in mine, and how right it had felt, despite everything else going wrong. The office felt suffocating as I sat at my desk Monday morning, trying to focus on performance reviews while my mind kept drifting back to Sunday's disaster. Every time someone walked past my cubicle, I wondered if they could see the guilt written across my face. You look like hell, Carla said, perching on the edge of my desk with her usual lack of boundaries. My colleague had never been one for subtlety, her bleached blonde hair and bright red lipstick as bold as her personality. Thanks for the pep talk, I muttered, not looking up from my computer screen. Seriously, Liz, what's going on? You've been weird all morning. I glanced around the open office space, making sure no one else was listening. Daniel and I had a fight last night, about Zoe. Carla's perfectly sculpted eyebrows shot up. About Zoe? What about her? He thinks... I lowered my voice further. He thinks there's something inappropriate about our friendship. Is there? The question hung in the air between us. I opened my mouth to deny it immediately, but the word stuck in my throat. Oh my God, Carla breathed, her eyes widening. There is, isn't there? No, it's not like that. We're just friends. But Daniel's being paranoid and jealous, and his mother is putting ideas in his head. Lysandra. Carla's voice was gentle but knowing. I've seen you two together. The way you light up when she texts, how you talk about her, the way you've been dressing lately. Honey, even a blind person could see you're smitten. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. Hope you're surviving the Monday blues. Thinking of you. Carla caught me smiling at the screen. See? Right there. That's not how married women usually react to friend texts. You don't understand, I said, quickly typing back. Barely. Last night was rough. Then explain it to me. But before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. Want to grab lunch? I have something that might cheer you up. I can't, I typed. Things are complicated right now. Because of Daniel. Liz, you can't let him isolate you from your friends. That's classic controlling behavior. Carla was reading over my shoulder, which should have annoyed me but somehow didn't. She's right, you know. My ex-husband pulled the same crap, started with my friends, then my family, then my job. Before I knew it, I was trapped in a cage of his making. Daniel's not like that, I protested, but even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. Maybe not intentionally, Carla said, but the result is the same. You're a grown woman, Lise. You have the right to choose your own friends. I stared at Zoe's message, my finger hovering over the keyboard. Finally, I typed, You're right, lunch sounds perfect. That's my girl, Carla said approvingly. Life's too short to let boring men dictate your happiness. At lunch, Zoe was waiting for me at our usual corner table, but something was different. She looked tense, worried in a way I'd rarely seen. What's wrong? I asked, sliding into the seat across from her. I've been thinking about last night, she said without preamble. About what your mother-in-law said, the way Daniel looked at us. Liz, I'm worried about you. Worried about what? About what happens if Daniel decides I'm a threat to his perfect little world. Men like him don't just let go, they fight back. A chill ran down my spine. Daniel wouldn't... He's not vindictive. Maybe not usually, but when men feel their territory is being threatened... Zoe shook her head. I've seen it before. My friend Rachel went through something similar. Her husband started documenting everything: where she went, who she talked to, how long she was gone. Built a whole case against her. Daniel's not like that, I said, but I thought about his questions lately. The way he'd asked about my evening with Zoe. The strange look in his eyes when he said we needed to talk. I hope you're right, Zoe said, reaching across to touch my hand. But promise me you'll be careful. Don't give him any ammunition to use against you. Ammunition for what? For whatever he's planning. Men like Daniel always have a plan. That afternoon, I found myself studying Daniel's behavior with new eyes. He'd been working late more often, but now I wondered if he was really at the office. His phone, which used to lie casually on counters and tables, was now always face down and within arm's reach. When it buzzed during dinner, he'd glance at it with an expression I couldn't read. "Who was that?" I asked as he silenced another notification. "Work," he said, but he didn't elaborate. Later that evening, while Daniel was in his home office with the door closed, Emma showed me another drawing from school. "It's our family again," she said proudly, but this time I remembered everyone. I studied the crayon figures. Emma in the center, me on one side, Zoe on the other. Daniel was there too, but he was drawn smaller, standing apart from the group with what looked like a frown on his stick figure face. "Honey," I said carefully, "why is Daddy so far away from the rest of us?" Emma shrugged with 7-year-old logic. "Because he's always in his office or at work, and when he is here, he looks sad." "Sad about what?" "I don't know, but sometimes I hear him talking on the phone late at night. He sounds angry." My blood ran cold. "What does he say?" "I can't understand the words, but his voice sounds scary." That night, I lay awake listening to Daniel's breathing, wondering what secrets he was keeping. Around midnight, I heard him slip out of bed and pad quietly downstairs. I waited a few minutes, then crept to the top of the stairs. His voice drifted up from the kitchen, low and intense. "I need to know everything, every meeting, every phone call, every text message. Can you do that?" There was a pause, then, "Good. And the other thing we discussed? The documentation." Another pause. "Perfect. The more evidence, the better. I want this airtight." I crept back to bed, my heart pounding. Who was he talking to? What evidence? What did he need to be airtight? The next morning, Daniel was already gone when I woke up. No note this time, just the lingering scent of his cologne and an empty coffee mug in the sink. I texted Zoe, "Can we meet today? I think you were right about Daniel planning something." Her response came immediately. "Of course, but Lise, maybe we should be more careful about where we meet. I have a bad feeling about all of this." "What do you mean?" "I mean maybe your husband isn't as passive as you think he is." As I got ready for work, I found myself looking over my shoulder, checking my phone for messages I might have missed, wondering if Daniel really was building some kind of case against me. But a case for what? We were just friends. Close friends, yes, but there was nothing illegal or immoral about friendship. Was there? I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror and saw a woman I barely recognized. Eyes wide with worry, face pale with guilt over crimes I hadn't even committed. Or had I? The house felt different when I walked through the door that Friday evening. Emma was at another sleepover, and Daniel's car was in the driveway, but something in the air itself seemed charged with tension. I found him sitting at the kitchen table, a manila folder spread open in front of him, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk," he said without looking up. My purse slipped from my suddenly nerveless fingers. "About what?" "Sit down, Lysandra." The formal use of my full name sent ice through my veins. I remained standing, every instinct screaming at me to run. "I said sit down." This time his voice carried an authority I'd never heard before. Slowly, I pulled out the chair across from him, my eyes fixed on the folder. I could see the edges of photographs, what looked like printed text messages, official-looking documents. "Daniel, what is all this?" He finally looked at me, and the pain in his eyes was devastating. It's the truth, Lysandra, something I should have demanded a long time ago. With deliberate movements, he turned the folder toward me. The first item was a photograph, Zoe and me at Brewster's Cafe, her hand covering mine on the table, both of us leaning in close with intimate smiles. "This was taken last Tuesday," Daniel said calmly. "The day you told me you were working late." My mouth went dry. "Daniel, I can explain." "Can you?" He flipped to the next page, a printout of text messages. My text messages with Zoe, including ones I thought I'd deleted. These are interesting reading, particularly this one where you tell her you can't stop thinking about her touch and wonder what it would be like to be truly free. The words swam before my eyes. I had written those things, late one night when Daniel was asleep and I was feeling lonely and confused. But seeing them printed out in black and white, they looked so much worse than they had felt in the moment. "Those messages were taken out of context," I said desperately. "Zoe and I are friends. Close friends, yes, but—" "Close friends," Daniel repeated, flipping to another page. "Is that what you call someone you've been meeting in secret for months? Someone you've been lying to me about?" The next document was a detailed timeline. Dates, times, locations. Every coffee meeting, every lunch, every evening, I'd claimed to be working late but had actually been with Zoe. The precision was terrifying. "How did you get all this? Does it matter?" Daniel's voice remained eerily calm. "What matters is that my wife has been living a double life for months, lying to me, lying to our daughter, lying to herself. I never lied about anything important." "Important?" For the first time, his composure cracked. "You don't think your marriage is important? Your family isn't important?" "Of course they're important. But Daniel, you've been absent for years. Emotionally, physically, mentally absent. I was drowning in this house, and Zoe was the only person who saw me, who cared about what I was feeling. So you decided to have an affair." The words hit me like a slap. "It's not an affair. We haven't." "Haven't what? Kissed, held hands, spent intimate evenings together while lying to your husband about where you were?" He flipped to another photo, Zoe and me walking close together downtown, her arm linked through mine. "This looks pretty intimate to me." I stared at the photo, remembering that evening. We'd been walking to the Thai restaurant, laughing about something silly, and Zoe had taken my arm to steady herself on the uneven sidewalk. In the photo, it looked like so much more. "You're twisting everything," I said weakly. "Am I?" Daniel closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. "Tell me something, Lysandra. If there's nothing wrong with your relationship with Zoe, why have you been hiding it? Why the secret meetings, the deleted messages, the lies about working late?" I opened my mouth to answer, but found I had no words. Because he was right, wasn't he? If everything was innocent, why had I felt the need to hide it? "I was confused," I said finally. "Lonely. Zoe made me feel special, appreciated. Things I wasn't feeling at home. So instead of talking to me about it, you decided to find those things with someone else. I tried to talk to you, but you were always working, always tired, always too busy for anything that mattered to me. And that justifies this?" He gestured at the folder. "The lying, the sneaking around, the emotional affair." "It's not an affair." "Then what would you call it?" Daniel's voice rose for the first time. "What would you call deleting messages from your husband? What would you call telling another woman things you've never told me? What would you call choosing her company over mine every chance you get?" Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. We both froze, staring at each other across the table like combatants in a war zone. "Expecting someone?" Daniel asked. I shook my head, but my heart was already sinking. Through the front window, I could see Sandra's car in the driveway, and behind it, Mark's truck. "You called your mother?" I asked, panic rising in my throat. "I called my family," Daniel said, standing up, "because apparently my wife prefers the company of strangers." Sandra and Mark entered the kitchen with the careful expressions of people walking into a minefield. Sandra's eyes immediately went to the folder on the table, then to my tear-stained face. "Oh, Lysandra," she said sadly, "what have you done?" "I haven't done anything wrong," I said, but my voice cracked on the words. Mark pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. "Lys, we need to talk about this, all of us." "There's nothing to talk about. Daniel is blowing everything out of proportion because he can't stand that I have a friend who actually cares about me." "A friend," Sandra repeated. "Is that really what you think Zoe is?" "Yes, she's my friend, and she's been more supportive and understanding than anyone in this family has been in years." "Supportive of what?" Mark asked gently. "Of your marriage, of your commitment to Daniel and Emma, or supportive of something else entirely?" I looked around the table at their faces. Daniel's hurt and anger, Sandra's disappointed concern, Mark's genuine worry. They were treating me like I was the villain in this story, like I was the one who had broken something precious. "You don't understand," I said desperately. "None of you understand what it's like to feel invisible in your own life. Zoe sees me. She values me. She makes me feel alive in ways I'd forgotten were possible." "And what about Daniel?" Sandra asked quietly. "What about the man who's worked himself to exhaustion, trying to provide for you and Emma? What about the husband who's loved you faithfully for 8 years?" "Faithfully," I laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call it when someone treats their wife like a roommate, when they're more interested in their spreadsheets than their family?" "I work to take care of you," Daniel said, his voice breaking slightly. "Everything I do is for this family." "No, everything you do is to avoid this family. Work is your excuse to not deal with anything real, anything emotional, anything that requires you to actually connect with another human being." The kitchen fell silent, except for the tick of the wall clock. Finally, Daniel spoke again, his voice deadly quiet. "You're right about one thing, Lysandra. I have been avoiding something. I've been avoiding the truth about who you really are." He reached into the folder and pulled out one final document. Even from across the table, I could see the official letterhead, the legal language. "What is that?" "Divorce papers," Daniel said simply. "I filed them this morning." The world tilted sideways. "You what?" "I'm done, Lysandra. Done with the lies, done with the games, done pretending we have a marriage worth saving. Daniel, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can... Can what? Can you promise to stop seeing Zoe? Can you promise to stop lying to me? Can you promise to choose your family over whatever fantasy you've built with her?" I opened my mouth to say yes. Of course I could promise those things. But the words wouldn't come. The thought of losing Zoe, of going back to the grey emptiness of my life before her, felt like suffocating. Daniel saw the hesitation in my eyes and nodded grimly. "That's what I thought." "I need time to think," I whispered. "You've had months to think," Daniel said, standing up. "You've made your choice. Now I'm making mine." He slid the divorce papers across the table to me. "You don't have to choose anymore, Lysandra. I'm choosing for both of us." The conference room smelled like old coffee and finality. Daniel's lawyer slid the folder across the table the way a surgeon hands over a death certificate. "Primary custody to Mr. Quill," she said. "Supervised visitation for Mrs. Quill. No contact with Zoe Marsh during visitation periods. Moral turpitude clause invoked." Moral turpitude. The phrase landed between us like a guillotine. I looked at Daniel, begging with my eyes for the man who once carried me over the threshold of our first apartment. He wouldn't meet my gaze. "Daniel, please. You left Emma with sitters 4 nights a week so you could feel seen," he said, voice low. "She asked me why Mommy doesn't want to read her bedtime stories anymore. Tell me again how this is about love." My own lawyer whispered, "We settle, or we lose everything in court." So I settled. 2 hours later, I walked out with every other weekend supervised visits, half our savings, and a restraining order that kept me from the one person who'd told me I deserved more. That night, in the sad beige apartment that smelled like someone else's life, I finally texted Zoe. "Me. It's over. He won everything. Zoe, I'm so sorry, Lise. This is all too intense for me right now. I think we need space. Space. After months of 3 a.m. confessions, inside jokes, hands held under tables, she needed space. I stared at the ceiling until dawn. The next weekend, I sat in a beige visitation room while a social worker watched me color with Emma. My daughter kept glancing at the door, waiting for me to turn back into the mother who was always there. I never did. Some nights I still open the drawer where I keep the single photo Daniel didn't take. The three of us at the beach, Emma on my hip, his arm around my waist, all of us laughing like the future was guaranteed. I look at that picture and understand, finally, what he meant when he said, "You never had to choose between us and her. You just weren't willing to choose us at all." He chose for me in the end, and every day since, I've been learning how expensive not choosing really is.